Okay, this is Yvonne Keller, and I'm going to go ahead and finish some more of the story. It's really a long and kind of drawn out, complicated story, but I left off at the investigator supposed to be meeting me at my mother's house on Friday, June the 8th. Now, mind you, when I talked with this investigator before we scheduled this appointment, she told me she would be at my mother's house before noon. She didn't give me an exact time. She said before noon, so I just sat there and waited. And, you know, noon came, 2 o'clock came, 3 o'clock came. I thought maybe she was running a little late. She never showed up. But what I didn't tell you is when we had the conversation on the phone, when we was doing the initial, she started the investigative talk after the intake clerk had given her the information. And the information she asked me after I told her what was going on was she asked me for my siblings' names and phone numbers and addresses. And I gave her all the information that she requested. Now, a word to the wise: don't offer or give anyone any information. When you're having something done, you leave it to them to get it on their own. Okay? Because in me giving this woman this information, I believe what she did was she called all my brothers and sisters to tell them that we were going to have a family meeting. Okay? This family meeting was to discuss my mother and, her money, I guess. I called them to help me, because my sister was exploiting my mother. So I called for their help. But now they wanted to get the whole family involved, which I didn't have a problem with because I think we all should be involved with our mother's business anyway. Okay? And prior to this, even prior to this, I had an issue with Curleen giving my mother her bank statements. And my mother would, every day when I would go there, Barney, why I don't get my bank statements no more? It seemed like I used to get my bank statements. It seemed like the last time I seen a bank statement, somebody had made a purchase, a big purchase for a car. It seemed like 2 cars. One was like $13,000, and one was like about 2 or 3,000. She said it seemed like somebody purchased 2 cars on my account. And she said, then I haven't seen no more bank statements. Now, the only person who was on her bank statement was my sister, Curleen. Did she receive and go buy herself a brand new Mercedes Benz, something that she had never had before in retirement? Yes, she did. I understand one of her grandchildren are driving and she got a car too. I don't know if that's where the money went or where the money went. But I know that that's what my mother was thinking because she said it to me. So every time I would ask Curleen for my mother's bank statements, it became a problem. So instead of her bringing my mother's bank statements to these little family meetings that we were having, she took and brought the bank statement from when my mother stayed with me, when I had her house remodeled. You remember I told you that my mother wouldn't stay with anybody but me. She said, well, I guess I go with her. I had to trick her and tease her because she was like, I ain't going to nobody's house. I said, well, them guys gonna come in here and work and they're gonna see your old kitty. I was messing with her. So I said, so you better come on and go somewhere unless you want to be looking at you. And she said, well, I'm going over your house. And she came over my house. And I'm going to tell you, I took damn good care of my mama. Yes. She was waking up talking about, I thought I was dreaming. I was smelling fried potatoes and onions. No, you wasn't dreaming, sister. You was smelling fried potatoes and onions and salmon cakes and pancakes. Okay? I got up and cooked my mother a home-cooked meal every day and with a big smile on my face because she taught me how to cook. And for me to be able to cook her good meals is a pleasure to me. Okay? And when my mother came over, she was saying that how she had went to the hospital because her blood pressure went up one day, I guess about a couple of weeks before or something. And so her excuse, because she never liked to come out the house, when she retired, she said, well, I'm sick. I was sick. I'm like, Ma, you ain't sick no more. So when she came over here, she had been saying she didn't want to come out the house because she was sick, but I got her over here. So I would take good care of her. And then in the evening, I would my friend would go out some evenings. And so she looked one day and she said, I'm not sick no more. I said, but you want to go with me? And she said, yeah. So I said, well, come on. And I went on and made sure she got dressed and put on something real cute, because we was going to hang out on the town for a little bit. And we went out and we hung out and we had a very good time. And then every time I would leave or we get ready to leave, she said, I'm not sick. And so she was just hanging with me and my friend every night after that. Okay. So that's why she was here. But while she was here one day before, her house was actually finished, I went out because she was sleeping on the couch out in my living room. I set up a nice pallet on my couch for her. And I came out there one morning and my mom just was sitting up on the couch and she said, here. And she had something in her hand and I'm like, what's that? And she had a check in her hand. And she said, here. I said, what's that for? She said, it's for you. I want you to have it. I looked at it. It was a $500 check. I was like, what? She started saying, but if anybody asks you, I said, I cut her off. I should have let her finish saying what she was going to say, but me and my big mouth, I cut her off. And I said, if anybody asks me anything, I'm going to tell them to mind their business because that's your money and you can do what you want to do with it. Okay? And so she said, okay, well, I just want you to have that. I said, thank you, Mommy. And I gave her a kiss. And I had my little $500 check. I went and put it away. And I went on out in the kitchen and fixed my mama her breakfast. And we went on about our day like a normal day. But when I was pressing my sister about bringing these bank statements and why was she stopping my mother from receiving her bank statements, and we even went to the bank and my mother told the people at the bank, I want my statements to come to my address, 5303, blah, blah, blah. And the woman called my sister while we was in the bank. Called my sister. Now, while we was going through this at the bank, the manager came over to see if anybody had power of attorney, listed on my mother's account. And it was like, no, nobody has power of attorney, okay? Now, this was during the time of, this had to have been about in somewhere between April, May, June. She was moved out in June. So this had to have been like maybe about in May, okay? And so they was like, no, she doesn't have a power of attorney, okay? And I'm listening to them and listening, to them talking amongst themselves, right? And I'm like, no, she sure don't. Anyway, and they called my sister, Curleen, on the phone. She had alerts on my mother's account that anything my mother do, she want to be contacted. But it's my mother's account, and my mother has other children who are also willing to be there, help her, who will not steal from her. It might have been some little nephews or some people on drugs back in the day who used to steal from my mother, but we pretty much stayed on top of that also, okay? And so they called my sister and they told her that my mother wanted her bank statements to come to her home address. My sister, Curleen, told the customer service rep on the phone, right in front of me and my mother, that if they change and send my mother bank statements back to her home, that she's only going to go on the computer and change it again. So the woman looked at my mother and said, well, y'all going to have to make up y'all mind where y'all want these statements to go. Because we're not going to keep changing them back and forth. Y'all have to decide. My mother said, well, I want my statements to come to my house at 5303 Whitfield Chapel Road. She said, well, your daughter just said she's going to go right on the computer and change it. So they didn't change my mother's statements to her house at that time. And had I my mother at the time wanted them to add my name onto her bank account. She wanted them to put me on it. And the man was saying, well, Curly had to be present too. All the parties had to be present or something or the other. I don't know what kind of mess they was talking about, but Curly ain't had no money coming into that account. Okay? So anyway, Curleen finally brought a bank statement to one of the family meetings we was having, because I was the one who kept requesting my mother's bank statements, because I was there with my mother every day. Nobody else was, but me, Rachel, Tiana, Tamaya, Tyree and Terrell, Emmanuel, JR from time to time. We were the only ones there with my mother every day. And we heard her complaining about these bank statements, so we knew. I even watched my mother curse the mailman out about her bank statements, okay? So me asking her to bring Curleen to bring the bank statements to the meeting was not being unreasonable. It was to bring the bank statements so that we could all know what was going on with my mother's money as well as she knew. What if she dropped dead? Somebody had to know what was going on. So since my mother had 7 children, we all should have had an equal right to know what's going on with my mother and her finances, okay? So Curleen finally brought to the family meeting that we had amongst us, not with social services. She brought the bank statement that showed and reflected the $500 that my mother had given me when she was staying at my house. And along with that, she outlined it and she told everybody that I stole it from my mother. Nobody asked me anything. I stole it from my mother. And so now all of a sudden, everybody's looking at me side-eyed and cockeyed like they got a problem with me, because my own sister, my oldest sister, who I really like to disown, took and manipulated and told all of them that because they saw this $500 transaction, that I stole it from my mother. When my mother sat right in my living room and called me out and gave it to me. I didn't even ask for it, okay? But I accepted it. I sure did. Anyway, so shortly after that, this story is so crazy. I'm telling you. Okay, so that was the problem with the bank statements. My mother came and stayed with me, gave me the money, then she showed everybody that statement. So that kind of like put me and my brothers and sisters at a little, that caused up a little animosity between me and my brothers and sisters. And when my mother had to go in the hospital with her, she had a kidney blocks, and my daughter called me one morning and said, "Grandma not feeling good." And she wouldn't eat her breakfast, this particular morning. I don't know, I think it might have been a Saturday morning or Sunday, whatever. My daughter was there at home that morning, and I didn't go over there that morning, excuse me. And I got over there and I called the ambulance, and the ambulance came, and I rode in the ambulance with my mother, and I had them to take my mother all the way to Washington Hospital Center. Don't play with me. She ain't go to PG. She didn't go to doctors because they didn't have a bed. I wasn't taking her to no Bowie Medical Center, okay? So I asked the ambulance driver, could y'all please take my mother to Washington Hospital Center? And they said, you know what, we got you. And they took me to Washington Hospital Center for my mother, okay? And when we was there, let me tell you why we was in Washington Hospital Center. We was in the emergency room. So, I had been in the back with my mother, and my mother was really sick. She really wasn't, she was a little lethargic. She wasn't feeling good, okay? And so they was trying to get to the root of the problem. Just coming in the emergency room, I had to check her in and everything. So then later, my brothers and sisters, they came up. My friend, he came to pick me up. And while we was there, I was in the back room with my mother, and I kept, smelling a little Like, I'm like, okay, but then of course, y'all, and anybody who know me, I had gas that day too, so I was like, wow. Anyway, I wasn't sure was it my gas or was it my mother, okay? But I checked my mother out. They ain't see nothing going on, so I just said, "Oh well, excuse me, y'all," and I let my two sisters go on and stay back there and visit with my mother. I went out in the waiting area, because they say only two people can stay back in the emergency. A little while later, I guess about maybe 5 minutes after I had been out there, my sisters came out there and said, "Girl, Mama blew that joint up. Ooh, she messed all over herself." She said, "We told the nurse to clean her up, and we going downstairs to the cafeteria to get something to eat." I looked at my friend, and he looked at me, and I was like, I don't even want to tell you what we said about them because I'm on here and I don't want my mouth to seem dirty. But I said something that was real, it was so appropriate for the situation. So what I did then is I got up and I went back there with my mother. And I hit that daggone emergency. When I went through the door, I was like, woo. Okay. I knew it was my mama. Okay. And I went over there and I said, I don't know where the nurse is who's supposed to be here helping my mother, but somebody needs to send her over here right now. Right now. And I went over there with my mother in my mother's little room, and I said, I looked and I was like, she was a mess. A mess. I would not have left a dog like that, okay? I'm serious. They left my mother walling in shit, okay? And come and tell me they're going to get something to eat, and y'all bitches want to take her money? Are you fucking serious? And you're going to take her money and put it in your name, in your account, but you left her laying in shit. Are you serious? Oh man, I cleaned my mother up. The nurse came in there, the little white girl, she came in there, and we threw everything in the trash. That's how bad it was. Even the blanket that was on top of my mother, all of it went in the trash. Okay? And I took and washed and cleaned my mother. And we changed and cleaned that bed. And we put my mother back in the comfort zone. Because that's the kind of love I got for my mother. It ain't no bones about it, Slim. Don't play when it comes to my mother. Okay? Because I know my mother would have did the exact same thing for me. Any of her other children. But anyway, that was just one situation. And then I'm talking about this woman. Let's get back to this woman. So I give this woman, I had given her everybody's phone numbers. So when she didn't show up for the appointment on June the 8th to come to meet with me to start this investigation of exploitation, when she didn't show up, I was like, wow, So I was like, okay, well, maybe something came up and maybe, she just couldn't make it. Or, I don't know. I wasn't expecting what happened, okay? So finally I said, well, the whole day had went by. So I said, wow, well, she ain't make it out here. So, I'll call her or maybe I'll expect a call to see if she's going to reschedule or whatever. No phone call, no nothing. On Monday, I get a phone call. I was home on Monday morning because I really didn't have any gas in my car and I didn't have any money. And my granddaughter had stayed home from school, and my daughter had took and did breakfast for me. I had called and arranged for that anyway, and so my granddaughter called me and she said, "Grandma, See, these people over here saying they're gonna take me, and grandma, grandma, I don't know what's going on. I'm scared. You know, and I'm like, wait a minute, what people? What who? She said, I don't know. It's a white lady, and it's a black lady, and it's a man, and they got the police, and they said they're gonna take me, and blah blah blah, right? And I'm like, wait a minute, who are you? So I calls her mother, and her mother, I guess she had already called her mother, and her mother gets upset with me because she thinks that I done called Child Protective Services on her. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, I wouldn't call no Child Protective Services on my daughter. My daughter's a damn good mother to her kids. She take damn good care of her kids, okay? And she don't even ask me to babysit. She don't ask nobody else to babysit. She take care of her own children. She take them on trips. She do things with them. She had to take my granddaughter out of school to homeschool her because she wasn't learning nothing in Prince George's County school system. So my daughter had to take her daughter out of school. So, I mean, what do you mean I called some Child Protective Services? I'm trying to understand what the hell is going on, too. So I gets over my mother's house. By the time I get over my mother's house, I see my sister Curleen, the Adult Protective Services investigator. She didn't show up for my appointment, but somehow she was there and met my sister Curleen. Now, she was supposed to have been investigating Curleen Addison. But instead of meeting with me, who filed the report, she met with Curleen, I guess after her phone conversation with her. Because I'm sure my sister, she crazy. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I used to work for the state of Maryland. Oh, and I did this and I did that. And she can manipulate and fool a lot of people, but she can't manipulate and she cannot fool me because I know her tricks. And I know her. But most people don't. And most people fall for the okie doke because they don't know no better. And she's manipulative. And if anybody is manipulative, that's exactly what they are. They have the ability to manipulate others. And she is an expert. Okay? So this woman met with her instead of me. Now, it's almost like taking a child who said somebody raped them and putting them in the rapist's hand. Then I'm saying this woman exploited my mother. My mother is the one who wanted to press charges, not me. Okay? This was my mother's doing. And then they take my mother, they come in my mother's house and lie. They had this guy, Mr. Waters. Let me show you, I got pictures. They had this guy, Mr. Waters, Ronald Waters, who works for DPI. Okay? He came over there, and he was supposed to have been the house, the code inspector, to see any, violations. Like my mother did have some violations because I always used to get on her about them. But if you know my mother, I'm my mother's child. And I told my mama, you can't have this kind of padlock on this door with the key because it's a fire hazard. You need to have a thumb lock. Okay? And as a matter of fact, we know a woman who died just like that, who was in the neighborhood, who was a friend of mine and one of my friend's mother. She had the same lock, and she got caught at the door trying to get the lock out the door and caught and burned up right at her front door. Okay? So I knew that was a fire hazard. Okay? And then I had the basement. Okay, I was renovating. I wasn't really renovating my mother's basement, but my mother had a wall that had some mold behind it, like the drywall in the rec room. And I had called her insurance company because, I was like, my sister wasn't unasked none of my mother's money to do anything in my mother's house. I had already had the upstairs renovated for free. My brother Carl and my play brother Tim, they were supposed to be taking care of that wall in the basement with the mold from the family meeting, which they never did anything. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna get on top of this myself. So I had my mother to call her insurance company, and she authorized me to speak with them, and I arranged for them to come out and do it and see what was covered, of the work that still needed to be done in the basement or what have you. And the guy said, well, it was unforeseen, something unforeseen, so he covered it. Okay, they covered it, and they gave me money for that to get that wall demolition. That means to have someone to tear the wall out. They had gave me the money, enough money to get it done, to get that, to see what the problem was. Okay, well, the contractors I called, they wanted a whole lot more. So, $5,000 was my mother's deductible. So it was like, okay, I better find a way to get this done with what I have. Okay. So what I did was I hired my friend and my son, and I had them to, we sort of like did the demolition, and I paid them. I wasn't going to expect them to just do it for nothing, because it was scheduled to pay someone. They didn't get paid what was the initial payment for it, but they got something. And then I got one of the guys from the neighborhood, Tracy Blue, and he came in and he did a pretty good job. He took all the studs out the basement wall. He took the bars off the window. He took the drywall. He replaced the studs, the drywall. He repaired the cracked wall behind there where the water had been coming through, which caused the mold. And then one day, my sister comes over there. My sister Thelma, my daughter slept in the basement in the back room so she could hear right through the wall. Thelma came over there and told Tracy Blue, don't do no more work. He can leave. Stop doing the work. No more work. He went to the bank one day to cash a check. I wasn't home. I had my mother to give him a check. I mean, she did have a $5,000 deductible, so if she paid something towards it, it wasn't a big deal. She didn't pay no $5,000, okay? But if I wasn't there and I needed her to send him for materials or something, she would write him a check. Oh, Curly and Thelma got mad about that. And he went to the bank. And he said that the people told him that they can't cash a check because Thelma Brown and Curly Addison had wrote a letter and said my mother had dementia. And she don't know what she doing. Who in the hell do they think they really are? I mean, seriously. Anyway, let me get to the story. This woman comes in with these, and she had two Prince George's County police officers. She had Ronald Waters with DPI, code enforcement. She had another lady, I can't remember her name. She's a Caucasian lady who worked with Child Protective Services. And then they had Miss Bagali, who was the Adult Protective Services. And then Miss Curleen Addison just happened to be present that particular day, on a Monday, which was very, very unusual because she never came there that early during any day of the week, okay? Because I was there and I know, okay? And when I got there, the police told me, you can't go inside. They stopped me at the front door and told me I couldn't go in my mother's house, where I have been going every single day, taking care of my mother. I am the one who called these people, but yet you telling me I can't go in the house? I'm like, excuse me? No, ma'am, do you want to go to jail? No, I don't want to go to jail. Go to jail for what? I'm the one who called these people. What's going on? Okay, so my daughter was already in the house, and her and the lady was, had gotten to a couple of little arguments or whatnot because this Miss Bagali, Amsel Bagali, Adult Protective Services investigator at the Prince George's County in the Landover office, she told my daughter that my mother and everybody had to get out of the house because the house was condemned because mold was in the basement. And everybody had to vacate the premises because they was closing down the house and condemning the house. and that my mother had to go with my sister Curleen because Curleen was her power of attorney. Whereas my mother said, I don't have no power of attorney. And this woman told my mother, Miss Amsel Bagali told my mother, you don't